All right. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you for joining me. Maybe let's just start with brief introductions to everybody out there who's going to be watching this video. Mita, why don't we start with you?
I'm Mita. I live in Toronto. Sikh background. I was born in East Africa, and I work in social services.
Thank you. Val?
I'm Valentina. I am from the south, from Chile. I now live in Turtle Island with my Indigenous children and my Indigenous husband. I am a social activist, a singer, and a mom. And yeah, that's about all that encompasses me. Yes.
Thank you. For those that may actually not know me, I am Heidi. I go by the nickname of Hi. I am a Latinx woman born in Guatemala, now living in Toronto, also known as Turtle Island. And I'm here to talk with Mita and Val about the Caremongering group that we started on Facebook. So why don't we start with some reasons behind starting this group, Mita?
The reasons were pretty evident when my neighbor came over and said, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. She is older, she has mobility issues, she has difficulty getting to the store as it is, and said, you know, she's on ODSP and the amount that she's going to be getting isn't going to be enough for the 2 weeks storage as had been planned. Her partner is out of town and sick, so she cannot travel for support. And I thought, okay, she's going to need looking after during all of this. And another neighbor who has a young child, they're going to need looking after through this. And the more I collected how many people need looking after through all of this, the more I realized there needs to be something in place, because the people who are homeless, my clients at work are vulnerable, that we really need to have something for them.
Right. And how did you come into this picture, Val?
Well, Mita and I have been good friends for a few years now. We actually came together during the work that was done for Standing Rock. Nope, I'm lying. Not Standing Rock, sorry, I Don't Know More, 2012. Sorry, sometimes they get a little bit shuffled. And so we became friends, and then Mita at that time was doing a lot of outreach work, and so we've kind of gotten to know each other within that community of doing grassroots outreach. So I hope it means she trusts me, and this is why she reached out to me. I was one of the first people that she reached out to and said, "Hey Val, do you wanna help me out with this?" And I can't say no to people, and she asked so nicely, and it was worthwhile to put my energy into. It's gotten a little bit out of control, but I am grateful to be being brought on board. And then Mita asked if I would who would take on the duties of media management, and because I have some experience in that, I volunteered, and it's turned into a bit of it went where we weren't expecting it to go. So being here with you, Heidi, today is a really good way for us to try and change the narrative and bring it back to what it's supposed to be.
Okay, so why don't we go with that? Let's talk about that. First of all, let's talk about the media attention it's received so far, and what are the key messages that we want to get across, because I'm a member of that group, thanks to you, Val, and because I do believe in what its main purpose is. And but I also want to make sure that we share with whoever might be watching this or listening to this, the meaning behind of caremongering, and also what it is that we want to accomplish with this group.
Go ahead, me. Oh, to me? Oh, okay. So I think with the media attention, it was really interesting because the first people to reach out were the BBC out of London. We had very, very clear and specific points that we wanted to discuss with the media. But what happened was, and the gentleman who did the interview was absolutely lovely, but I also think that the editors for that particular piece were really looking for a feel-good story. And so the majority, other than one quote where I'm saying we want to support those who are most at risk, especially right now, I'm now remembering every word verbatim because it was a bit of a frustrating experience. everything was not taken out of context, just the pretty things were put in, and then the things that we really wanted to say, that we also really wanted to say, were not included. So what happened with that, because the BBC picked it up and it's such a large media conglomerate, we, the North America went, whoa, across the pond they're talking about Canadians, why aren't we in on this? Right. And so they saw that, and so many of the articles that have been posted that have not reached out to us for comment. Fox News, Christian websites, Israeli newspaper, you name it. They basically just kind of took the sound bites from the BBC article and reposted their own version of the same story. So what we found is that the message that we were trying to get out there kind of got taken over by this narrative from the BBC about the fact that Canadians are nice, and that it's kind of focused on that. And then the name has also kind of gotten away from us, and I wanted to put that over to Mita, because she came up with the term, and it's being used in ways that perhaps we didn't intend, and I really wanted Mita to talk about that, because the word came from a place deep inside her, and it's important that we talk about where that came from, I think.
I was talking to someone who I was trying to keep safe, and I really wanted them to take every single precaution necessary, and they said, you're scaremongering, you need to stop, you're fixating, and you're scaremongering. I said, no, I'm not scaremongering. I don't want to plant fear in you. I don't want there to be fear. I'm doing this out of a place of care. I want everybody to be healthy and get through this. And that's where caremongering came from. And then in context of my neighbors, my work, people on the street, in my neighborhood, I thought this needs to be a group. How can we help and change that narrative? And that's when I reached out to Val and I said, like, who's with me on this?
Right.
And within half an hour, I had 10 people who were, good friends and community members, very strong community members, saying, we'd love to do this. So right from the beginning, it was a group effort. There was never an emphasis on one person. And we did this as a collective right from the beginning. And that was one of the ways that the story is being subverted repeatedly by places like the BBC, is that they really like having a person as a face in charge of things. They're used to seeing things as hierarchies. So they keep either putting Val in charge or me in charge, and both of us are like, no.
Both of us in charge.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
There is no in charge. We work by consensus, we communicate, we discuss, we think of what each other's strengths and areas of expertise are, and we trust each other to do our own thing in all of that. There's a great deal of latitude for people to be able to do what they feel is right. And that if anybody disagrees, we'll talk about it, but there is no one in charge. And the other thing, BBC completely turned over the narrative is that this Canada Cares thing, Canadian exceptionalism, aren't we wonderful? Let's pat ourselves on the back. And they're completely missing the point that this group wouldn't exist if Canada did care. It's because it doesn't care that this needed to be started, because we're scrambling to set up these supports that have been ripped off from people. And if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have that same sense of urgency that we do in helping others.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of summarizing it, Mita, because I realized I was also explaining this group to a couple of friends, and I was saying the same thing. If people were not in need here in Canada, there wouldn't be this sort of thirst, if you will, for like knowledge of where the resources are or who can help me. And I realized that even for myself, somebody who's really like well versed in certain things in terms of healthcare, there's things I don't know. So I am also coming to this group to learn a few things and also figure out how I can help other people, because I'm very well aware that there's a lot of marginalized communities out there that for many reasons, we're not able to get through when we're actually doing well. So so to speak, right? So I think it's important that we continue to talk about why it is that we need these groups in the first place, the need for community at this time.
Yeah, and if I can add something, I think it's a really interesting thing to note. And I noticed that once we came together as a group, because Mita had reached out to different people individually, and once we came together in a group on Discord, it became apparently clear that all of the people that were doing the work were Indigenous, Brown, and POC, people of color, and there was a real camaraderie there coming from that. But there was also, that really woke me up to the fact that, as Mita said, people who are in these groups are, often marginalized within our communities and within the country at large, and we're having to take care of each other because of the failures of government over the last couple of decades in Ontario, specifically with the cuts that Mike Harris made to public health, where half of hospitals would close, where you weren't given the beds that we could maybe use right now. Apparently there's going to be a shortage of that, according to the U of T study of how things will progress.
Right.
With the illness. And so I think there's been such a failure from federal, provincial, and city governments when it comes to providing assistance and investments in infrastructure and capital improvements on existing community housing projects, where some of these places, I remember a co-op that eventually was torn down on Dundas, just west of Broadview, that they had construction pillars inside their homes to be able to keep the ceilings from collapsing on its residents. This has been going on for a very long time, and so we are taking care of each other. But I think that narrative that we're taking care of each other, it's so pretty. It does reinstate my faith in humanity, but it also really glaringly proves that if had the governments been doing their job when it came to investing in social housing, public health, social assistance, you name it, even public transit, we wouldn't be where we are right now, and the need would not exist, as you mentioned. So we have to talk about that. That's innately political. And so we have a lot of people who come into the group who don't like the politics of it. Well, it is political because people are going to die because of political decisions.
And the thing is, for a lot of us, our existence is political. If
Yes.
we are LGBTQ, we are political just by existing.
Yeah.
The same for migrants, the same for so many in our communities. When they said, wash your hands frequently, I was stunned. I was stunned with the emphasis on hand washing and zero focus on the fact that there are still communities that are on boil water advisory, Indigenous communities all across Canada, that haven't had clean drinking water for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
And how are they going to do this when all of their water is bottled and they can't afford it? Like, you look at the cost of the water up north in some of those communities, and it's $20 for a case of 12 bottles. And then it's all tied in, because on one hand, they don't have the water, then the water that is being sold to them is being extracted with really terrible practices.
Mm-hmm.
And they're forced to buy water from companies that are exploitative. And how is that not political? When the act of washing your hands becomes political for people, how can the rest of us stay silent? It's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of another way to put it in perspective for, like you said, Val, some new members that are maybe not acquainted with the situations, maybe because they also don't have friends in certain communities, or are just not in contact with a lot of the people that we are very well aware are in high needs at this point, and also in pretty much every day in Canada. It's not just because of the crisis of the coronavirus right now. It's sort of their day-to-day living. And I think these caremongering groups are great, but I feel like this is something that we should be innately doing day to day to support our fellow humans. Anything else you want to add, Mita or Val?
One of the mandates of the group is that, yes, we started to help out in a particular crisis. But now that we have all these people here, let's focus our attention on systemic changes. It's inevitable that there will be another crisis down the line. Prevent that from hurting as many people as this one will. If we make those systemic changes, we could reduce the impact for so many people. If we make life livable and affordable for people, then they're in a much better position to deal, and we're not left scrambling in the future. So I want to see this group focus its attention after this crisis on making systemic changes.
Val?
Yeah, I second what Mita has said. I really think that people need to understand the urgency. People with privilege who are not or have not been in situations of homelessness or precarious housing or food insecurity, there's going to need to be a lot more compassion and a lot more education that needs to happen. We're in a unique position to do that with over 15,000 people in the group, and that's growing hourly. And for those who choose to stick around for that message, even though they may not have ever heard what anti-oppression frameworks are, they may never have heard certain terms, if they're willing to stick it out and work with us, we can build a better place for all of us. It has to come from a place of compassion, empathy for your fellow humans who are suffering, and it has to come from a place of accepting and understanding your own privilege. I had an Indigenous friend of mine. She used to live in Kingston, and she's moved to further north, and she said to me, I was really offended when she said it, and it made me realize we were talking about how, like, I'm sometimes worried about where my rent is going to come from, and she said, well, some people worry about that all the time. And then I realized I have privilege, and that hurt, because I had to look in the mirror and realize that as a brown woman living below the poverty line, I still have privilege over others. And so if we all did that, if every level, if every tier of human in this city, in this province, in this country took a minute to care enough about what they carry that others are not able to carry because of their vulnerability, we're going to have a much better place for all of us to live in. And then we can start talking about being exceptional. Not until then.
Right. So before we tap ourselves on the back or on the shoulders, there's still a lot to be done in that respect. You know, perspective taking is one thing, being compassionate, and I think most importantly it's also being informed, like you said, that there are other people whose situations are very much different from ours, regardless of the fact that I may be struggling. There's somebody else who still needs more than what I have, but I'm still able to help in some way. So just because I don't have financial means or certain resources doesn't mean that I cannot support my fellow community members.
You got it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this group brought into focus for me is that it's not just about the people who don't have, it's also about the people who have. There's a different tier of crises that are manifesting through all of this. There was a woman who was concerned that she is being quarantined and self-isolated with her abuser, that normally he's at work, out of the house, she doesn't have to deal with him. But now for 2 weeks, it's just the two of them and no supports. What should she do?
Wow.
It really brought it home of the different levels of challenges we're all facing. And it's not a have or a have not. It's the circumstances unique to us that make living difficult. And how do we ease that for each person? She can't go to a shelter. The shelters are full. She has children. And there's so many systems that are not in place for handling so many emergency situations. How can we make those systems better able to support more people?
Exactly. And I think that's also a reminder that all of our needs are not just physical needs. There's also mental health or psychological needs that we need to consider as well, that are impacting a lot of members in our communities. I also, before I forget, I do want to talk a little bit about how some of the members of the groups are actually coming through for other people. Anything you want to highlight so that people actually see how we're putting this group to good work?
Can I take that one? So just a couple of things that really moved me and that I was really shaped by. There was a person who was making a large pot of lentil soup, and I don't like lentils, but my point is she was making a large pot of lentil soup and basically offered it out to the community. And I made a comment. I just said, "Hey, I don't eat lentils, but this sounds like I would eat that." And what I meant to say was, "Hey, I'm gonna make that soup." I didn't. And she like jumped around. She's like, "Okay, like, wait, how can I get it to you?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm not in need. I just wanted to let you know that I'm so moved by your offer." And this was at the very beginning when the group first started, and a lot of people took her up on it. She's done it twice, I think, in the past week, where she has provided food for those people who are either shut in or who are hungry. Two different groups, right? You either shut in and hungry, or or just shut in. And she's provided these soups to people, and then people came to her aid as well, say, "Hey, I have a bunch of jars. How can I get them to you so that you can get the soup to other people who need it?" And that one really stuck out for me because I thought, that's kind. That's generous to do that. There's labor involved. There's all kinds of labor involved in producing food and then getting it to people. And the other one that really struck me was the first mom to reach out to us, who said, "I'm a single mom on ODSP. I have a newborn and a 3-year-old, and I can't get out, and I also don't have the money to stock up on diapers and wipes." And the response was so immediate from the community. It was so fast, and it was this. It's like it was whiplash of generosity, and it really helped to see that. And so those are the two examples that I saw that really stuck with me, and I've been talking about them often because people do want to help. We just have to tap into that and see how we can spread the wealth.
In addition to that, the people are offering services. There's teachers who are not at school who are doing stuff online. They're setting up viewing parties, videos for children, story time to help parents out. It's exchange of services. I could do I can't go to my gym, but I will run an online exercise class.
Yeah.
There's some lovely services that are being offered, people sharing their skills. The one that hit for me was personal. Shortly after I set up the group, I realized at my place of work we need gloves. They're mandatory, but we were down to our last 2 boxes to be shared by 23 people. And we were going to run out of gloves. They were back ordered. We could not find them anywhere. We checked multiple companies, nothing was available, and they said it would take at least a week and our gloves would run out long before that. And I posted on the site and said, "Does anybody know where I can find gloves? I need to go buy some." And within 2 hours I had a knock at my door and it left gloves on my doorstep. And it was so touching that I hadn't even said that I want them, hadn't even made that connection with them. They just happened to know where I lived and thought, "You need gloves." I was in the pharmacy, I found some, I dropped them off to you. And opening the door to find them. That was just really lovely. And it made me realize how much that means to be on the receiving end of something that you need. The gratitude for that box of gloves was so immense. And I just thought, we're spreading this across the city, and how wonderful is that?
Yeah, I think I want to echo that from both of you, that some of the stories have also moved me personally, and I do appreciate the efforts that you're making, and I thank Val for making me join the group first thing. I mean, she knows I'm on board anyway, but it's always good to know, because sometimes we're busy doing our things in their day-to-day jobs and we're not aware of what's happening in terms of our community's needs and everything. So I thank you both for speaking with me today. I thank you for doing the work and making us do the work too. so we can share that workload together. So I'm going to end here, but you know, if we need to do this again, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to share the stories like this ones, and also if we need to reach out to other groups so that they're aware of what we're doing, this is one way for us to do so. So I'm here to help you, even if it is virtually as well.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thanks, guys. Virtual hugs.
Big hugs to you.
All right. Thank you.